There are actual UFOs that are off-planet origin. Some say NHI, non-human intelligence. But then there are the man-made ones, and they have black budget funding, unsanctioned and illegal black budget funding. The issue, I will say without hyperbole, is by far the gravest national security problem the incoming president's going to face.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks for tuning in. This is a kind of a special little segment we have here with Dr. Stephen Greer. If you did not hear Dr. Stephen Greer's interview on The Resilience Show, I urge you to go back, listen to it. It's episode number 24. We talk about all the amazing stuff he's able to uncover and reveal to the public on UAPs. I know he doesn't like the word, but for generic purposes of people that know, UFO, the topics of government conspiracies and this stuff, and some just incredible things that he reveals in his archives, which, by the way, you can find his archives at dpiarchive.com. Just all the evidence he has of these government programs that have hidden very important things from the American public that you can have access to. You can follow, you can check out more Dr. Stephen Greer's work at stephengreer.com. And so welcome just on remotely, Dr. Greer.
It's great to see you again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm tuning in here from the infamous Jocko Willink, Jocko Studio, and I'm here in San Diego. We just recorded an episode on his show, and then he recorded on mine. So it's we're just super blessed that he let us use this to talk with you. What I want to just cut right to is there was recently a congressional hearing, a congressional testimony on UAPs, and it was very important, but it didn't hit the mainstream media, which is disturbing. So one of why isn't the American public super informed about this, and then what was covered in this congressional hearing?
Well, unfortunately, it wasn't covered because it was a nothing burger, as we say, and part of that is that the congressional members that I've met with on that committee, House Oversight, they don't have any staff investigating this, and we warned them of this problem, and so what they had in front of them was one very well-placed and professional disinformation operative named Luis Elizondo. And he has been gaslighting people up on the Hill for a few years now. And then there were three other people who were really pretty much secondhand, one of whom I won't name. I've spent a couple hours with in the last 6 months, giving him several terabytes of data related to this, which he feigned no knowledge of during the hearing. So one of the problems with this kind of behavior, what we call it the clown car in Washington, is that there's a reason why only 12% of the U.S. public approve of Congress has an approval rating of 12%. It's like 1/3 that of the outgoing president or less. And it's because of this sort of shenanigans. Now, a couple weeks earlier, I had been meeting with people with the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services Committee, and I had a whistleblower with me, firsthand direct Marine, former Marine like yourself, as well as the director of a special forces operation that's moving into law enforcement to get to the bottom of this, and a senior official from the United Kingdom. And in those meetings, of course, these are clandestine or classified. Often they're in a skiff. That one wasn't. Others are that I have had. And they're just gathering information and trying to figure out what's going on. But there too, they've never put together a specialized task force that has funding and subpoena power to get to the bottom of it. So to give you an idea how surreal this is for someone from my perspective, if you go to the dpiarchive.com, it's the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive. It's 34 years of accumulated evidence. And in there are over 115 named military and corporate whistleblowers, name, rank, serial number, and their testimony. Any one of which would be 10 times more spot on than what you saw in the last few days in Congress. The other, we have 760 of these. The other 600 plus are people who we have not unmasked because they're waiting to be officially subpoenaed, or they're on the criminal end of operations, illegal end, and they will have to be interrogated and probably prosecuted. So when people talk about, I think one of the pop terms now is the deep state, what they're not realizing is that this issue of UAPs, UFOs, is the crown jewel of that entire enterprise, and it's a transnational criminal organization. One of the problems with Congress is that they haven't done the investigation thoroughly enough yet to reach that conclusion. Now, luckily, the guys who have converted from military special forces into this law enforcement special access project have concluded that. But of course, they're going to have to roll very carefully, and they're afraid of being infiltrated and stopped. And some of them have, of course, already been threatened. But I mean, their lives and their families. But they're in a position to move forward. And I think with the incoming administration, what we'll be hoping to do, I'll be creating a briefing document for the incoming president, as well as a set of executive order recommendations. And we hope that that program, which operates as a top secret special compartmented information, TSSCI SAP, will be stood up more robustly, and then we'll be able to proceed. Now, as far as the Congress, I really, having dealt with them since the 90s, I don't see any particularly courageous people in the Congress who could push this through to where they would have a proper select committee with funding and a team of investigators with subpoena power. Now, in defense of people like Mr. Burchett, Congressman Burchett and others, he asked for that and they were shot down. And they were denied that this past spring. On the Senate side, they did pass a bill that was part of the National Defense Authorization Act last December that got torn apart in the House, where they removed the so-called amnesty or safe harbor provisions for high-value whistleblowers, where they would be protected, but also be given about 6 months where they would not be prosecuted. So that was torn down about a year ago, a little less, and never was able to go through the reconciliation process between the House and Senate. So this sort of inside baseball notwithstanding, the issue, I will say without hyperbole, is by far the gravest national security problem the incoming president is going to face, because it involves so many aspects of what he would like to see fixed, and which has been running amok in terms of illegal operations embedded within government and government contractors for now, I guess, almost 70 years, about 65 years that they've been run without supervision, outside the Constitution, and kind of completely out of the eye of both Congress and presidents. And this is a threat to our, democracy. But more importantly, there are two big aspects of this. One is there are actual UFOs that are off-planet origin. Some say NHI, non-human intelligence, which to our assessment are completely benign. But then there are the man-made ones. And I'd say 80% or more of all the craft that people see are coming out of the Lockheed Skunk Works. My uncle's company was Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and a few others. And they have black budget funding that's been siphoned off of the government that have not been approved, unsanctioned and illegal black budget funding that have made those breakthroughs possible, but they have been operating without supervision from Congress and the president. And this is left, right, center, Republican, Democrat. It's the same. They're all in the same boat. So this has got to get resolved for some very important reasons, not the least of which is the Constitution and governance, but also we're on the verge of fighting wars in three areas, or there are wars emerging. Many of them are rooted in geopolitical problems that would be solved by this coming out. For example, once this information and technology comes forward, we're going to have a quote unquote free energy economy. We're going to have total energy independence for the United States, but also every other country. Poverty and pollution around the world will be ended because of the nature of the technologies. Because when you look at how those things fly, they have no payload. There's no rocket fuel. They're not using SpaceX. I mean, they're using extreme, and these are man-made ones I'm talking about. Right. They're pulling energy out of the fabric of the space around them. It's very complex, but it's basically called zero-point energy. And then they have a lifter effect where they float and fly. So let's separate those two. The things that are flying really need to remain, at least their plans and their schematics need to stay secret, because it could be a missile delivery system. But the things that would sit on your house and run it, or inside your car and run it without plugging it in to a power grid, those need to come out. So this is a big technology story, and most people don't realize that. But the other part of it are the false flag operations, which these covert programs, one of the people defecting that I'll be meeting with here in Washington in the next day or two, he is operational. He's been an SO, special operator, but now he's senior in the system out in a Western black site that has an underground component. And he wants to defect with all the evidence and proof of this. So what I think is going to happen, and I'm going to put out a call right now, is that he now has identified people at 6 different black sites to defect because they know how criminal these operations are and how dangerous they are. And I'm calling for more people to join us in that. And here's why. People say, well, would they be violating their national security NDAs? I said, no, because the programs that they're working in, this is the big trick. Most men who come in, whether they're in their late teens, 20s, 30s, they have no idea they're operating under an illegal project. But the ones who are like him, senior enough, they would then realize it.
Because they're outside of the Constitution.
Yeah, they're trapped. And so it's kind of a gotcha. And they're innocent. I would say 90% of the men and women that work in those projects are good people, but they got pulled in. And because of the compartmentalization, and you know how this works, Chad, I'm sure, they don't know really the whole picture of what's going on. So it's been our job to put that together, and we'll put it together for the incoming president where it becomes quite clear. It should become quite clear to him very quickly that this is a very big problem for our country and for the world. It needs to get fixed. I think it can get fixed, I'm hoping, in the next year or so.
2 things. One, you said the whistleblower protection. There's something recent though that you had passed through Congress, right? So there is whistleblower protection.
Well, actually, what we did, no, the one that would have been rigorous about that. There are already whistleblower laws, by the way, which anyone can afford themselves up. We were talking about where if they had committed crimes, right, then they would get a period of immunity for 6 months. Now, here's some good news. We have just, this special access project that's been stood up in the last couple of months has reached a point where they can extend immunity to anyone. And this is not, and so I'm making a call on your show because I know you have a lot of military folks who watch it. If you have been in that situation, you can come forward now confidentially with me, and we will, you can reach me at drstephengreer.com, and we will see that you are handed off to those folks and they have official ability to provide you immunity. So at this point, we actually don't need the Congress to do that. We have done a workaround through, I can't say which agency, but a law enforcement agency to do it.
The incoming Trump administration, having an office like Elon Musk is going to run, the Department of Government Efficiencies, Gavin Vivek over there. Like, as they're looking at these budgets, I mean, clearly they're going to be able to identify, hey, you got a couple of $1 billion being reallocated here. The government budget was off, missing, we misallocated $10 billion. Where did it go? And is that going to reveal some of these programs?
Well, it's unlikely unless we guide them through it. And let me explain why. The Pentagon just failed its 7th audit today, and there's some $1 trillion just flat out missing. I mean, it was all in the news.
Trillion with a T, right?
And we estimate over the years, there's at least 8 to 12 trillion that have gone into these illegal operations. Now, how do you do that? Well, everyone knows there's a black budget of the United States. It's, tens of billions of dollars. And the Gang of Eight and the Congress and the president do oversee that. But then there's an illegal operation within that because it's so compartmented where they're siphoning off huge amounts of money. And this is not only true of the black budget, but other budgets as well. We have a whistleblower came forward some years ago who had worked in the first Bush administration in housing and urban development, HUD. And she was asked to clean up waste and fraud. And she found that there was money being, frankly, embezzled and misappropriated out of HUD into illegal black projects. When she blew the whistle on it, she was threatened and she was fired. So her name is Catherine Austin Fitz. You can look up her work. And she was I think deputy director of, HUD, one of those, or assistant director. So this is a big problem. So I don't think someone who's new to all this who I greatly admire, Mr. Musk and Vivek. They're very smart, but I don't think they even know where the washroom would be in this area. And that's one of the big problems, because you can't just have KPMG or Deloitte or some accounting firm find this. I'm friends with an auditor who audits these big aerospace companies. And when they begin to see this huge amount of money disappearing, they're just told, you don't have a need to know, it's TSSCI. And they will say that to anyone in the US government, including people in the White House or the president. These are people who are thugs, and they are brazenly breaking the law, and they will threaten people. And the other big problem is, here's a big one. You come across this, and you sort of that book Into the Buzzsaw that was written years ago about some of these scandals. And what happens is that you're either offered a lot of money, or you're threatened, bribed, blackmailed. And I see no exceptions to this. I mean, as I said, there's a CEO of a major household name corporation who's come forward recently to us, who has the documents and worked on these technologies, energy and propulsion related to UFOs, UAPs. And as soon as he did, he had his entire family threatened. And so, and people say this is some kind of like a John le Carre spy novel. It isn't. This is what. And this is why, the chief investigator for the Senate Intelligence Committee, about 3 years ago, when he began to meet with us and I handed off all this material and information, he was followed, he was threatened, he's still being harassed. It's very worrisome. And so I think that needs to be a very robust executive order deploying the resources and the protective details that people won't come forward. It cannot be this amateur hour, quite frankly, like has been going on in the U.S. Congress. And I appreciate the people trying to get to the bottom of this, but look, they have two hands and one leg tied behind their back because they don't have staff, they don't have funding, they don't have subpoena power. And without those things, you're not going to go very far. You're going to have this sort of dog and pony show that happened a few days ago up here in the House.
Got you. Well, man, I really appreciate you, Dr. Greer, updating on this. And, we want to be behind getting this information out as it comes forward. So just keep pumping it to us, and we'll help share it.
I really do want to put out through your and other people's networks this request for people to come forward who are in facilities who can bring forward the material and the evidence. They can do so with immunity, and they will do so securely. Number two is that the group that is currently doing this or planning this, when they come forward, I'm going to have in my hands the hottest potato in the history of this subject or any subject, and I will hand it off to you to give out to your supporters.
We will take it and get it out. We'll gladly take and get it out, and
it'll curl your toes. It will be it'll be what everyone's asking for. The actual extraterrestrial bodies, the ET craft, the man-made craft, the testing of it, crash retrieval operations. That's what this team is defecting with.
And it's time.
And I'm going to need good, courageous guys like you guys to push it out.
We're behind you, and we want to inform the public just like you do on these things. And for that request of those whistleblowers that do want that immunity and do want to have a place to be able to have a voice, again, it's drstephengreer.com. Then we'll, like I said, go back episode 24 if you want more history on the subject with Dr. Greer, and then upcoming, we have another episode scheduled. But between now and then, if Dr. Greer has anything hot, that hot potato comes out, then we're going to help push it out to as far and wide as we can.
You'll get a text from me if that lands in my lap, because I want it pushed out. I want it out of my domain very quickly. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, Dr. Greer, thank you so much for your wisdom, your insight, and your voice in this subject. It's something I'm super interested in and passionate about, and so is a lot of the American people. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the work you do. God bless.
Yes, God bless you. Guys, I'm a lifelong athlete. I've tried all kind of things, from every different diet, from all different supplements, tons of different things to make my body as healthy and as functional as possible. I heard about BioPro years ago from jiu-jitsu athletes, from UFC fighters, and they're all friends of mine who I trust that were telling me, you have to try a BioPro, and I did. I experienced a tremendous result, mostly in my sleep, to where I was sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, to where I immediately went to sleeping 9 hours a night. BioPro has helped my recovery, my mental focus. I am a believer. I love it, or I would not be promoting it. If you're interested, go to bioproteintech.com and get yours today.